Hi and welcome again to Seekers and Cynics. Here we are at Bodmin Road Church on Bransholme, and my name is Richard Bentley, and as many of you will know if you watch regularly, this is our short weekly attempt to answer your questions and to try and explain the Christian faith to anyone and everyone who wants to know a little bit more. Last week I took the Bible story of Jesus turning water into wine, and we thought about what that might mean for us today. And this week I want to take another of those miracle stories from the Gospels that is probably familiar to many people, and to again think about what that story might mean for us today. And the story I want to think about today is the story of Jesus calming the storm. And it's a simple story. Jesus gets into a fishing boat. His disciples, or certainly some of them, were fishermen. They were used to fishing on the Sea of Galilee. And he wanted to get to the other side. He was going to the towns at the other side of the lake. And so it was quicker to sail across than to walk all the way round. And so they got in the boat. And partway across, this terrible squall storm blows up, and the waves are high, and the ship is rocking, and the water's coming over, and Jesus is actually asleep, and the disciples have to go and shake him, and they're shouting, "Jesus, don't you care if we drown? Don't you care if we drown? And do something." And he gets up and stands up and speaks, "Be still," to the wind and the waves, and the storm dies down, and they find themselves back in calm water, and they reach the other side. What might that story have to teach us? Three very simple things. First of all, in life, crap happens. And bad things happen even when you are on the right course. You know, those disciples, they weren't bad people. They weren't due a drowning or a soaking. They were decent people on the right track. They were doing what they thought they should be doing. They were with Jesus. And yet still, this terrible storm blows up. And that was quite common on Galilee, still is today, because of the way the water is at such a low level, and the hills and valleys that surround it, the winds, the flow of air around Galilee can blow up these very sudden and furious squalls. So it's the story fits exactly with the geography and the nature of Galilee. And that happens, and they're with Jesus. And for us too, in our lives, bad things can happen. Terrible storms, trauma and tragedy and loss and pain. A great many things can come apparently out of nowhere, and just cut right across our lives. And the disciples go and shake Jesus and say, "Don't you care? Don't you care? We're going to drown." And that's how it feels, isn't it? In the middle of a storm, in the middle of something terrible, we wonder, does God care? And I think the first lesson of this story is that these things happen to us all. You know, it's not that bad things happen to bad people and good things happen to good people. You know, the disciples were good people, they were on the right track, but still this storm came. Life is full of randomness and meaninglessness and terrible things that can strike at any moment. And it's not that God doesn't care. It's just that is the way the world is. That is the world that we live in. And what really matters is that Jesus is there with us, and that we go and speak to him. The disciples didn't just try and bail out on their own. They went to speak to him. He was there with them. What Christianity promises is not that bad things won't happen. There are some versions of Christianity, particularly in the States, that seem to promise you health and wealth if you do just the right thing. Absolute tosh and rubbish. Even if you are doing the right thing and you are following Jesus closely, bad things can still happen, as they did on that day on Galilee. The promise of Christianity is not that that stuff won't happen, but that Jesus is with you, that he is with you, and that you can go and talk to him, and that he does care, and he can do something about it. It's not always maybe what we expect, but that he can do something about it. And of course, in this particular circumstance, he calms the storm. For them quite suddenly. For us, an answer to prayer might not be quite so sudden, might not be quite so dramatic, but nevertheless, if we go and talk to him, he is with us, and he can do something to change our circumstances. That's the first lesson of this story. Rubbish happens, bad things happen to all of us. But if we will go and talk to Jesus, if he is with us, then that is what God promises to us, that we can speak to him, and that he is with us, and that he can make a difference. The second lesson of this story, that's a very practical one. It is a much more theological one, because at the end of the story, the disciples say, "Who is this?" They're blown away, understandably. "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Who is this? This is no ordinary man, is it? You and I don't go out, in a boat at Bridlington and calm the sea. Who is this who does that? And what's interesting is that if you know the literary history throughout the Old Testament, there was this portrayal of God alone, as being the one who could calm the sea. The sea was viewed as the residence of evil, a tempestuous, tormented place where evil was. There's the sea in the Old Testament, not literally, but it was a symbol. It was a picture of chaos and evil, and there are numerous Old Testament passages where it speaks of God commanding the sea to be calm, and every good Jewish person knew those writings. And so when Jesus steps up on that boat and says, "Be still," for the disciples who know their Old Testament, he is sending them an unmistakable signal. Who is this? This is God in the flesh. And that is the teaching of Christianity, that Jesus Christ is God himself, momentarily for a short time incarnated in humanity, in human flesh. That Jesus is no less than deity himself, stepping onto this earth. And that miracle story, we miss it, but for those first century Jews, they would have understood what was meant. And the last lesson, very briefly, I want to put to us as a question is, what is Jesus in your boat? The disciples could go and talk to him because he was in their boat. They had invited him, they'd accepted him, they'd made him welcome in their fishing boat. It was their fishing boat, not his. He was borrowing it. And at the very heart of Christianity is Jesus' request to share our boat, to share our lives, to come and be in us and with us and part of us. And yet he won't barge his way into our lives. He waits to be asked, to be invited. We've got to let him on board in our lives. That's what being a Christian is. It's simply someone who's got Jesus in their heart, Jesus in their boat. They've made a pact with him to walk with him and talk with him. And yes, bad things will still happen, because that's the way this world is. But once he's in there with you, he is always with you, and he's always there for us to pray to and to talk to. But the question is he in there? Is he in your boat? Can you go and talk to him? And that is the invitation that Jesus gives to every single person in this world. If we will only open the door of our hearts, that we will let him in, then he will come in and change our lives from the inside out. That is the message of Christianity. It's not about being good enough. It's simply about accepting Christ and accepting his invitation, having him in our boat, so to speak. Not just for the bad times and for the storms, but for the sunny days as well, that he becomes our friend and our saviour and our king. He becomes our everything. That is what a Christian is. So is he in your boat? Let me finish with that question. Is Jesus Christ in your boat today? Have you asked him in? See you next time.